Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today it's a full list of cold CGC 9.8 comic books at fair prices. Yeah, because I think there's quite a few YouTube channels out there doing the hot comic book videos or the trending comic books or new comic book day even. But I think especially when you're talking about CGC 9.8s, hot comic books usually mean high prices. Like almost every time I see a 9.8 on the hot list, I'm like, wow, that was like 20, 30, 40, 50% more in price than it was a month or two ago when it wasn't on the hot list. So that's what these videos, these ongoing cold lists that we like to do are all about, just identifying some really cool key issues that you can buy at a fair price. Okay, so let's get into the full list here, full list of 10, and I actually don't have any of the CGC 9.8s on this list, otherwise I would have brought one or two out for some eye candy, but yeah, so we'll get some good ideas here, and I was kind of tempted doing some of the research for the video on some of these as well. Okay, let's get into the first one though. First one here to recommend cold comics at fair prices is a Spider-Gril number 75. Yeah, this book, it's from 2004. Really cool cover on this one, and obviously notice here she's got the new black costume on, which is really cool, I think. Yeah, just a great, well-executed cover. To be honest, I didn't sort of do any research on the story to know if this black costume is like a symbiote, or if it's just like she got a new costume and it's black. I have no idea, but a really cool cover on this Spider-Gril 75 from 2004. Looking on the census here, 22 CGC 9.8s in the blue label out there, so this is definitely an underfollowed one, a cold one, whatever you want to call it. Only 22 in the 9.8 in the blue label. 61.1% the 9.8 ratio, so of all graded copies, 61.1% of them are 9.8s. Nothing to really write home about there. Looking at price for Spider-Gril 75. This one, yeah, with that 2004 release, it's sort of in the bit of a lost era of comics there, where, you know, kind of in that comic book recession right before sort of the Marvel movies really started coming out one after the other and getting people pumped up about superheroes again. So I can kind of see how there's only 22 9.8s out there, but this one probably pretty tough to find. There actually is one on eBay right now in the 9.8. Yeah, it's for $149. So I would think, you know, if you're really patient on this one and you want it and you're, you know, on top of your searches and everything, you could probably get it closer to 100, to be honest. I think, you know, 110 in an auction seems like that would be quite fair. But if you want it now, because there's only 22 out there, there is one online for $149. Maybe one to consider if you're a big Spider-Gril fan and you're liking this cover with the new black costume. Yeah, definitely sort of a key issue for Spider-Gril, but definitely not one that I heard about very often, and certainly underfollowed for sure, but one to consider if you're a Spider-Gril fan. Okay, next one, cold comic books at fair prices here. We got a Wolverine number 24. Yeah, so Wolverine 24 is a very classic Jim Lee Wolverine cover of the era. Probably my favorite. There's Wolverine 27, I believe it is, where the Jim Lee sort of jumping Wolverine cover. I think that one's probably a little more popular than this one, but personally, I kind of like this one better, I think. So I was kind of, you know, definitely check out Wolverine 27, great Jim Lee cover as well. But Wolverine 24, kind of my pick of the Jim Lee Wolverine run, I think. 53 9.8s in the blue label. I thought there'd be more. Yeah, I know, you know, some people out there really like this key as well. I really like this Jim Lee cover, so I actually thought that there would be more than just 53 out there in the blue label. 68.8% the 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 68.8% of them are 9.8s. Yeah, not too bad, nothing really rare. Like the lower the better with those 9.8 ratios, so not too rare this one in the 9.8, but prices are pretty reasonable because of that. Yeah, so right around, for Wolverine 24, right around $120 I think is a fair value. You know, in an auction, this is one I'm pretty sure I've saw it go under 100, and then, you know, maybe if you want it right now kind of thing, like 125, 130. But yeah, I think that range, we'll call it just under 100 to up to 120 for Wolverine 24. Yeah, if you're in the market for kind of an affordable Jim Lee cover, and I sort of am, I know I picked up that X-Men number 11. This one was kind of tempting me. I didn't kind of pull the trigger or anything, but Wolverine 24 with only one of 53 in the blue label for just over $100, I think is a great Jim Lee cover to consider of this Wolverine era. Absolutely. Okay, next one here, Cold Comics at fair prices, is a Shadow #1. Yeah, from 1973 I want to talk about. Yeah, this one you see occasionally, and I personally never got into this book, or I never really knew about the Shadow, the superhero here. This is the first DC appearance of the Shadow in this comic book. But from 1973, a lot of times you're like, wow, there's probably hardly no 9.8s of this one. But for this one, it's a bit of an oddball because there are quite a few 9.8s. 140 9.8s in the blue label for a 1973 comic is quite a lot. And yeah, for how old this comic is, just how the trade dress looks, like it looks really cool in the 9.8 because you just never really see this era of DC Comics in a 9.8. So it is a pretty cool one. 13.8%, the 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, only 13.8% of them are CGC 9.8s. And, you know, for a book that's this old, that's not looking as good. If this was in the 80s, I would say that's a really good investment grade ratio, but kind of a weird one here. Shadow 1, a really cool one, but one you can still get in the 9.8, even though it's a book that came out in 1973. So prices, right around 200, I think is a fair value. You know, maybe a little bit over if it just looks awesome and it's perfectly centered in a new case kind of thing maybe, but I think right around 200 is fair, under 200 if you're lucky in the 9.8. But if you like this book of the era, then, you know, this is kind of one to grab, I think. It's, you know, if I maybe had a little bit more of an affiliation or a nostalgia for the Shadow, I would probably pick this one up. Because cool cover, yeah, and a cool 9.8 from 1973 is a pretty great collector item, I think. So one to consider there, Shadow #1. Okay, next one of cold comic books at fair prices. But this is really like a classic key issue, so maybe it's not cold, but, you know, I don't really know of any sort of imminent promotion or anything. But I want to talk about a Punisher Limited Series #1. Yeah, Punisher Limited Series #1 is a really well-collected Punisher book in the 1980s. It's, you know, sort of obviously the first appearance of Punisher is a huge one, that Amazing Spider-Man 129, and then probably this book is next in line for Punisher fans, I think. So Punisher Limited Series #1, it's the first solo Punisher story, basically, her first Punisher in a solo title. So there are 348 CGC 9.8s of Punisher Limited Series #1. Yeah, and mentioned it was a really well-collected comic. I've noticed over the years here, kind of the last 3-4 years of collecting, that a lot of Punisher fans are like, you know, Punisher Limited Series #1 and Amazing Spider-Man 129. Like those are just the two books they really lust after. And 348 in the 9.8. You'd think there'd be a little bit more, actually. Like this one's pretty tough to find in the 9.8 because Wolverine Limited Series, there's like over 2,000 of those in the 9.8. So only 348 of this one, very similar kind of a book and era. 17% the 9.8 ratio on Punisher Limited Series #1. So of all graded copies, only 17% of them are CGC 9.8s. That's lower and more rare than Wolverine Limited Series #1. So we look at prices for Punisher Limited Series #1 in the CGC 9.8. Basically, like Go Collect has the fair market value right around 500. Like I think it's right at 500 on Go Collect. On eBay, you're kind of seeing some go a little under 500. And basically right around that 500. So maybe if you're really patient, you get it a little under 500. And Wolverine Limited Series, that one has sort of heated up to like 450 to 500 as well. And in my experience, the Punisher Limited Series was always a little more expensive than Wolverine Limited Series. Like there's less of them, it's more rare. So now that Wolverine Limited Series has really kind of come up in price, and I think it's sort of because the Frank Miller signing got everyone kind of pumped up about that book. And so they sort of remembered how much they liked it. So, but that one has sort of went where I purchased mine about a year ago for $276, I think it was. Now it's $500. Whereas Punisher Limited Series #1 in the 9.8 in that time frame was probably about $350. It never got below $300, I don't think. Not for a while anyway. And now it's getting up to that $450, $500. But anyway, I really prefer, I think I would say at this point, with the prices being about the same for Punisher Limited Series and Wolverine Limited Series #1, I prefer Punisher Limited Series #1 in the CGC 9.8. Yeah, such a great cover as well. one of 348, you know, way less of them than the Wolverine Limited Series #1, and a better 9.8 ratio. So yeah, Punisher Limited Series 1, a great investment grade book, but it does kind of fit on a cold list too, because I don't think there's kind of any movies, or there's not like a new Punisher show where there has been in the past kind of thing. So kind of a decent time to get one if you want, yeah. Okay, next one here, get into a modern here that I talked about maybe once on the show, but worth mentioning again. Really cool modern first appearance. It's a Teen Titans #20 here. And I do want to talk about the Jimenez variant, because I think this one's the most popular, it's the easiest to sell, and you can get it quite easily for this one, and at an affordable price still. Like, it's not like it's a super expensive variant really quite yet. So the Teen Titans 20 though is the first appearance of Crush, who is, I believe, like the stepdaughter of Lobo, I think it is. Related to Lobo, Crush. She's looking really cool though. I kind of initially just really like the look of her. So this is a bit of a modern first appearance I've kind of kept my eye on. I didn't kind of buy one yet, but for this Jimenez variant is kind of the one that I like. And it's got kind of Crush right prominently on the cover alone. So kind of with her first appearance, it goes really well that way. 232 9.8s out there in the blue label, so it's pretty popular. Yeah, this one's pretty popular for a modern. 74.1% the 9.8 ratio, so of all graded copies, 74.1% of them are 9.8s. Again, a new book, so the 9.8 ratio not as important. So completed listings for this one. Having a look on eBay, sort of 133.50 I saw one end at, and there's a couple there is a buy it now right now. I'm pretty sure it's like 150 or 149.99 or whatever it was, and there was like one gone and maybe one or two left, so one had sold of those at 150. So I think that's the price range, you know, if you're patient in auction, 133.50 ish, maybe a little bit less. If you want it now, there's one online for 150 in the CGC 9.8. Yeah, this Jimenez variant, he's really sort of gone to town with these type of variants too. And this, I feel like, was one of the original ones, one of the first ones where it's like, you know, her, and he's done all these covers since with like Batman and Nightwing and Punchline. And so this is kind of one of the original sort of Jimenez variants. And I think that could be a bit underappreciated about this one. But yeah, in the modern first appearances out there, like First Crush, it's still really affordable, and I think it's, you know, for me, I kind of probably want it because I just really like the look of her. Like, she looks really cool, and I like the Jimenez variant cover as well. So this is one to consider for me, and yeah, if you're big into modern comics or you like Crush a lot, I really like the Jimenez variant, so definitely one to consider there. Okay, next one's a really cool one, I think, and interesting because there are some rumors, and I didn't really sort of make sure of the rumors kind of before I got on camera, but we'll talk about it here. It's a Detective Comics 585. It's the first appearance of Ratcatcher, this one. Yeah, Detective Comics 585. Definitely an underfollowed Batman book. I love Batman books of this era. This is one I've sort of zeroed in on at times, but never ended up pulling the trigger kind of thing. But love my sort of first appearance of Batman villains as well. So the thing with the Ratcatcher right now is apparently the Ratcatcher is going to be in the next Suicide Squad movie, apparently. And I didn't read too much. I'm just sort of hearing this through the grapevine, so I don't know if this is confirmed or not. But it doesn't really seem this book is like heating up that much. So I thought it would still sort of fit on a cold list, I guess. There's 21 CGC 9.8s out there though. Yeah, not too many at all. And that's kind of typical with these Batman books, but you think because the cover's kind of cool and there's a first appearance, there might be a little bit more, but only 21 9.8s out there in the blue label. 32.8% the 9.8 ratio. Not too bad for sort of this, you know, kind of late 80s book. Not anything great, but not too bad. 32.8% of all graded copies are CGC 9.8s. So Detective Comics 585, having a look at prices. So basically anywhere like just over 150, I'm sort of seeing most of them end at. I think, you know, maybe if you wanted this one right now, it's a little bit closer to 200, but I think the fair value is kind of right over that 150. 150 to 175, let's call it. But, you know, with Ratcatcher coming out in the Suicide Squad movie, maybe that does well and this does well, or maybe it doesn't do well and this kind of falls off the face of the earth. So tough call on this one, but if you're a Batman fan like me, I think this one could just be worth, from the sort of pride of ownership perspective, as just getting sort of a 1 of 21 of the first Ratcatcher villain with a pretty cool Batman cover. I think kind of makes sense at the lower end of fair value, though. I wouldn't really pay up for this one in any way, but because to be honest, like, I do have a feeling that the next Suicide Squad movie is not gonna do the best. Like, it's just, there's been quite a few of them already, and I think with each one it kind of fizzles out. So I wouldn't really, buy this as a speculation, thinking that it's gonna explode in price or anything like that. But if you're a Batman fan, one to consider: Detective Comics, $5.85, first appearance of Ratcatcher. Really cool, kind of late 80s cover there. All right, next one here is a really cheap one that you could possibly buy if you're into this storyline or hero. Incredible Hulk 106 I want to talk about. This is when World War Hulk begins. So a pretty big storyline, and kind of ties in with like the Thor Ragnarok story a little bit as well. So Incredible Hulk 106 though is a really good affordable 9.8 that you could buy if you kind of like this story and you're a big Hulk fan. Yeah, we'll look on the census, you'll see why it's very affordable. 150 9.8s in the blue label. This book coming out in 2007 though. Even though it came out in 2007, 91.5% of all graded copies are 9.8. So it's not rare at all in the 9.8. Even though it came out in 2007, you'd think it'd be, the 9.8 ratio would be a little bit lower there. But 91.5, so almost all of them are CGC 9.8s that are graded. And when you look at the price for this book, basically there's a buy it now online right now for $49.99. Yeah, so I think $50 is online now. You wait for an auction, maybe it's like 40. But yeah, this is just a really cheap one if you're a Hulk fan and maybe you're a bit nostalgic about that World War Hulk storyline. This is kind of a really cool 9.8 to buy for super cheap. Yeah, right around $50 for an Incredible Hulk 106 is, I think, one to consider anyway. Okay, next one here is one you can get for an affordable price, so, and for like a fair price right now. That's why I really wanted to include it on this list, even though I did talk about this one on our Hot Lady covers, but it's Batgirl number 23. Yeah, the Josh Middleton cover. This is so collectible, and there is a lot of collectors that are really go after this one, and this really does kind of stick out in the Batgirl covers and DC lady covers in general. This is just so well collected. And right now it is one that you can, it hasn't heated up at all. And I think even in the past, it was probably a little bit more expensive. So I think right now, if you like this book, it's a good time to kind of get a decent price for it in the CGC 9.8. Give you an idea of how well collected this is. 728 9.8s in the blue label for a non-key issue. Just the cover's hot. Like, that's the only reason why people are really buying this one. Just a great, well executed, cute Batgirl cover. And yeah, 728 9.8s out there. So obviously a lot of guys out there, and maybe some girls too, want to get this one in the slab just so they can look at it whenever they want. And I don't blame them for that. 84.2% the 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 84.2% of them are 9.8. So not really rare in the 9.8. And that's kind of good. And then it keeps the price a little bit lower for a book like this. So basically for this one, 150 to 180, I'll say. You do see quite a few sell like for 170, like, 170, 175. If you're more patient in an auction, closer to 150. If you want it right now, maybe even up to 200. I think I've saw them sell for, certainly in the past as well. But I think this is one worth collecting. Yeah, it's if you're a Batman fan, if you like these lady covers, like any angle from that, I just think it's one worth having. And yeah, this is one I sort of got on my watch list and maybe waiting for one to pop up in Canada for that lower end of fair market value. One to be patient on. There's 728 out there, so it's not like, there's 33, and if one pops up, you got to be so quick. Like, no, there's 728, so next week another one will pop up on eBay, and then if you miss that one, 2 weeks later another one will pop up for, hopefully closer to the fair price. So one to be patient on, but definitely one to consider. Batgirl 23, sorry. Such a hot Batgirl cover, yeah, with the red hair, and so well done by Josh Middleton. I could see that one just becoming more and more collected. So if you can pick it up for a fair price now, that could be one worth going after. Another Batman one here, Batman number 361 I want to talk about, and this is from one of my favorite eras of Batman, I gotta say, from that sort of mid to early 80s era there. This is the first appearance of Harvey Bullock. So I don't know if there's anyone out there that watches the Gotham series, but I've actually just sort of recently gotten into it. Yeah, I think I'm on the second season now. I'm starting to really get into it and really like it. At first I was a bit on the fence, but Harvey Bullock is one of the main characters. He's like, him and Jim Gordon are detective partners, essentially. And yeah, for Batman 361, definitely a more underfollowed key out of this era. It's one I haven't pulled the trigger on yet. I've considered it in the past, but I just like other issues, but it's certainly a cold book. And if you're a fan of Gotham and you really like the Harvey Bullock character in Gotham, this is definitely the one to get, and you can get it for pretty cheap. So there's 30 9.8s in the blue label out there. So not very many in the blue label 9.8, only 30. 31.6% the 9.8 ratio. So for this kind of mid to early 80s book, that's, you know, sort of average to, you know, nothing to write home about at all, but you'd almost like to see it in the teens if it was really rare, but 31.6% of all graded copies are 9.8. So price on this one's pretty reasonable, I think. Most completed listings I'm seeing, there's one online right now. I'll mention that because you can buy one online, and I think it's $160. I'm pretty sure it's $160 buy it now. That seems like a reasonable price, but I think on this one, if you're patient in an auction, you get it closer to kind of $120, or if you're right on top of your searches and you kind of get a best offer on eBay, possibly, you could probably make a deal closer to $120. But only 30 of these out there. Yeah, could be one to possibly go after. To be honest, like, you know, Batman of this era I really love, but I like Batman 366, which is the first kind of first time Jason Todd puts on the Robin costume, and there's a cool Joker cover. So I like that one. I like that book better. 363 is the first Nocturna, the first full Nocturna. I just unboxed that one a couple weeks ago. I probably like that one better as well, and the big keys I really like better too, like Batman 357. So, you know, this one's definitely on a cold list. That's why I wanted to put it on. Like, you know, nobody's talking about it, and it's not gonna really explode, I don't think, in any way, but one to consider if maybe you're into that Gotham series, or if you're just the biggest Batman fan and you want all the keys of this era. It's certainly a key issue, and yeah, one online right now, I'm pretty sure for around $160, but hopefully you get it kind of closer to $120, to be honest, for a Batman 361 in the 9.8. First, Harvey Bullock. Okay, last one on the list. Really interesting one too. Yeah, this, I think, it's weird. Like, could it just completely fall off the face of the earth, or does it have some potential maybe? Yeah, we'll talk about it right here. It's Amazing Spider-Man version 2, number 5. So this one came out in 1999. So it's the first appearance here of Mattie Franklin Spider-Woman. So kind of a new Spider-Woman in there. John Byrne on the cover too, and it's sort of like an Amazing Fantasy 15 cover homage a little bit, but John Byrne doing some of the cover art, which is kind of cool. So first, Mattie Franklin Spider-Woman. You also get a first appearance of another Spider-Woman, and it's apparently it's Madam Web's, I think it's like her granddaughter or something, is the new villainous Spider-Woman. So it's like Mattie Franklin's the spider hero Spider-Woman, and then this other, I didn't write down her name actually, I'll have it in the bottom there on the description, but there's a new villainous Spider-Woman in this book as well. So this 1999 era, these books kind of tend to get lost during this era sometimes. So there's only 32 9.8s in the blue label out there, kind of a 1 of 32. 74.4% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, right around about 75% of them are CGC 9.8. So not really rare in the 9.8 at all, but a bit of a cool first appearance that might have some potential. The thing that I initially thought of right away was Madam Web is going to have a Disney Plus show, I'm pretty sure. That was announced like last year, but I don't know if they're going to follow through with that. But if that happens, maybe this like evil granddaughter Spider-Woman of Madam Web is a reoccurring character, possibly. So that could be, you know, maybe the way to speculate on this book. But the good thing about this one is the price. Yeah, so there's actually one online for this one too in the CGC 9.8. Yeah, I was really surprised to kind of see one. It's $78 too, and a buy it now. So, you know, this one's really cheap. It's just nobody's really talking about it. Nobody knows about it. It's definitely a cold book. 78 in a buy it now. Maybe if you're really patient, you get one even closer to 50 bucks in an auction, because really it's not one anyone's really talking about. But if you're sort of into this era and, you know, maybe this sort of seems like a decent spec for you with these new Spider-Womans and that villainous Spider-Woman who's Madam Web's granddaughter, I think it was. It could make sense right around that sort of $70, $80, you know, definitely not over 80 for this one, but this one could make sense if, you know, maybe this is your era, that late 90s era, and you get these cool first appearances. So one to consider that you can get at a fair price. Okay, that is the full list of 10 cold comics at fair prices. Yeah, I love to do these kind of ongoing cold lists and sort of identify some of these books that are a lot cheaper than some of these hot ones. I'll have a full list in the description below of all 10 books if you just wanted to have a resource. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. Really quick, if you haven't already, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Hit the bell for all the latest video notifications and add me on Instagram and Twitter. All the links in the description below. But yeah, these ongoing cold lists, it's just a really good way to kind of, you know, try to find some really cool books that you can still get at a great price. Because yeah, I mean, like I said, especially in 9.8s, especially in CGC 9.8s, whenever a book has some promotion or there's a new show and, you know, there's the YouTube channels start making all the hot comic books about it, the prices are always much higher than I was sort of used to, you know, 2 to 3 months before that specific issue got hot, whatever it might be. So yeah, I always sort of recommend on the channels here, you want to be patient during those environments and always think about books that you really love but don't really have a lot of promotion that you can get out there and kind of buy at a fair price. And this is exactly what these videos are all about. Okay, so yeah, the full list of 10, I think there's some good ideas out there. Definitely, yeah, I think that Batgirl 23, I think that's going to be one that I'll probably end up getting. Wolverine 24, probably my pick of a Jim Lee cover out of that Wolverine run. Punisher Limited Series #1, like just a great solid investment grade book that you can kind of get at a still fair price right now. So yeah, a lot of food for thought here in the whole list. So definitely check out the list in the description below again if you need to. All right, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate all the support from the whole team. Message me on Instagram if you do have any kind of specific questions. Yeah, get at me on Instagram, and love all the conversations I'm having on Instagram with the team though. Okay, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.